Happy Monday morning, everybody. Welcome into another week of Morning Jocks. Conrad Van Order and John Saber here with you until 7 o'clock. So Damian taking a few days off here in the middle of the season. He'll be back with us later in the week. But man, oh man, what a Monday we're about to have right here, because we have a lot of things to get to. And I thought up until yesterday evening that we would probably be right now talking about Auburn getting their first SEC win of the season, and then getting into Alabama being able to escape South Carolina there over the weekend, and we'll certainly get to all of that. But sometimes things happen unexpectedly and very quickly in the world of college football, and it kind of changes around the biggest stories of the weekend, to say the least. So on Saturday night, we all watched, or many of us watched, as Texas A&M absolutely took it to LSU to the tune of 49-25 there in a night game in Death Valley. Texas A&M outscored LSU 35-7 in the second half. I mean, it was an absolute beatdown, and it felt like what was the, kind of the final straw in the hat for LSU this season in terms of knocking them out of the college football playoff conversation, and it was another feather in the cap for Texas A&M. But to think that game right there, and then 24 hours later, less than 24 hours later, after the conclusion of that game, that would lead to the firing of one Brian Kelly. Well, I didn't quite have that on my bingo card, but that's exactly what happened, as it was announced a little after 7 p.m. Central Time last night, that LSU has decided to part ways with head coach Brian Kelly, and they made that official after hours of meetings and discussions with people from the LSU athletic department, people there that are on the board of trustees. The governor of the state of Louisiana was a big factor in this decision being made. The discussions were held at the governor's mansion there in Louisiana, and part of that is because you don't have a president currently there at the university for LSU. So you've got the governor that gets involved, and ultimately, if you were on social media after the game, you saw where the governor had gone out on Twitter and posted, "Yeah, I don't know if it's a good idea to raise ticket prices next year based on the performances we're getting on the field this season." Mm-hmm. So when you saw something like that, you knew, it's probably not a comment that you just throw out there unless you're pretty ticked off and ready to make some things happen. And they take their football very seriously down there in Baton Rouge, because when you owe a guy upwards of $53.7 million in a buyout, and you're willing to, essentially the span of under 24 hours, make a decision that will alter your football program for years and years to come, that just goes to show you how seriously they take things there. And their expectation is to win a national championship. And if you can't win a national championship, or at least get close and be in that conversation in a 4-year period of time, then they're going to move on and find somebody that can do that. So a very interesting day, nonetheless, in the world of college athletics, and we have tons and tons to get into here. But we have a new coaching search now going on in college football. There have been 3 SEC coaches that have now been let go, and we are still in the month of October this football season. So it's certainly wild to see. But Brian Kelly, so he has now spent 4 years at LSU before being let go. He had a record of 34-14, but of those 14 losses, 11 of them came to ranked opponents, because he was only 5-11 in his 4 seasons there against top 25 opponents. He had a 19-10 record in SEC games. Of course, a lot of us remember his first season back in 2022, probably the best season that he had, because he made it to Atlanta in the SEC title game after knocking off Alabama. And then they kind of got crushed by Georgia, to be fair, but they did make it to Atlanta. They made it to the SEC title game, but he never made a college football playoff. And when you work at a place where the previous 3 head coaches had all won a national championship, the standards are certainly quite high, and the expectations quite high for Brian Kelly, and he just wasn't able to meet them. So right now, Brian Kelly's buyout would be $53.8 million. From what I understand, the university and him are trying to negotiate, I guess, a way to make that easier to stomach for LSU, where maybe he would eat some of that money and be allowed, and I mean, maybe they've paid him $30 million. I don't know, whatever they end up negotiating with, but I do know that part of his contract is that he is required to actively search for a new coaching job, which would help mitigate some of the money that LSU would owe him. But if they were on the hook for the full 53.8, that would be the second highest buyout of all time, behind Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M. And of course, LSU AD Scott Woodward was the AD at Texas A&M when Jimbo Fisher signed that job. So you could say that LSU's athletic director technically is in charge of the two worst contract buyouts in the history of college athletics. And he did it at two different schools, and he's about to go hire another coach. Pretty wild.
And this is on the heels of James Franklin getting basically $50 million.
Correct.
Too, for getting shown the door. I don't know if you have a friend that always complains about not having money, yet always is kind of out and about with you and everything. Oh, I got to pay for this, or I got to pay for that, and yet you're still happy to do it. Don't ever let people tell you that college football ain't got money. Because look at what's happening. I mean, Billy Napier's getting a little over 20. Gundy's getting 15. Sam Pittman's going to get around 10. Jay Norvell at Colorado State's going to get 1.5. Brent Pry at Virginia Tech, let's not forget him. He's getting about $6 million. It does pay to be an ex-coach in college football. And I want to say I'm surprised at this, but we started – I don't want to say hearing rumblings of this, but we started feeling the discontent in Baton Rouge over the last couple of weeks. It was like, okay, like you don't think it'll happen, but okay, he's maybe gone at the end of the year, but they're probably heads will have to roll. And listening to a podcast on the way in, the host was saying how that's probably why Brian Kelly was a little animated. Like you saw him saying, what the blank are we doing? When you could have easily stopped the play call. I mean, you're the head coach. If you didn't want that play run, say something. He went after a couple of staffers, one of which I wouldn't have been surprised if Brian Kelly wouldn't have been let go. He might have been the sacrificial lamb. So in theory, it's just shocking and surprising to see Brian Kelly being gone at LSU. But if you actually look at kind of what's happened and the way it's been and just how he just didn't – I know Cole on Mac and Cube has said he's trying to get away from using the word fit like so-and-so was a fit, because let's be honest, Sam Pittman was a fit at Arkansas. Ed Orgeron was a fit at LSU, and granted he won them a title, but less than 2 years later he was out. So just because you're a fit doesn't mean that you're going to be a successful coach. Brian Kelly never felt like a fit, but – he also didn't feel like he fit in. He didn't feel liked or even try to endear himself. Or the one time he did, he pulled a Johnny Mox and I don't want your life. And James Vanderbeek, from a movie that's over 25 years old, is still not living down that accent. You think Brian Kelly's going to be able to live that down? My family? Like that just all of a sudden right there is like, whoa, okay, this dude's trying too hard. It ain't going to work.
Yeah, I mean, he did get off to the best start, and I think – I think we all know what he was going for, but at the end of the day, right, at LSU, all they care about is winning football games. So they don't really care how your accent is or where you're from. If you go down there and you show them that you're going to put a winning product on the field, then you're going to win them over. And he clearly was trying to do a lot of other things to win them over. And I thought Ross Dellinger, he had a really good write-up last night, kind of going into some of the behind-the-scenes conversations and kind of going into how they came to this decision so quickly. And, one of the people that he talked to, it was, they put it pretty cleanly in the sense that, Brian Kelly had lost the locker room, right? In the sense of guys weren't, kind of like you were saying, right? He was looking at, pointing the finger at other people for mistakes and decisions that ultimately fell into his lap, right? And when it came to the players, there didn't seem to be a lot of trust or faith from the players that he was the guy that was going to get them into a national championship or into a college football playoff. And when that happens, we all know, right, if you've lost the locker room, then it's over at that point. There's really not a whole lot left to say from there. But you did mention the fact that this is just another in a long stream of coaches that have been paid a lot of money this year to not work at their current programs. any longer. And so, in fact, if LSU, again, it goes back to if they have to pay out the ultimate buyout of $53.8 million, that would mean that we have paid out $167.9 million in total buyout money to college football coaches just this season. Just this season. That's the most ever. And we haven't even made it to November. So, again, a lot of people are showing you, hey, we feel like the time to strike is now. And if we're not competing at the highest level right now, then we're going to pay whatever it takes to get out of this and find somebody else that we think can lead this program, whether that's LSU, Penn State, Florida, Virginia Tech, Oklahoma State, what have you. A lot of people feel like a time to make a changes right now. So for LSU now, their new interim head coach is going to be Frank Wilson. He was their running backs coach as well as the associate head coach there for the last couple of years under Brian Kelly. He does have some head coaching experience. So he was at LSU for a while. He was there under Les Miles. And then he had left. He became a head coach at UTSA as well as McNeese. Then he came back to LSU a couple of years ago under Brian Kelly, and now he will be elevated into the interim role. And his first game, of course, will be after the bye week when they travel to Tuscaloosa to take on the fourth-ranked Alabama Crimson Tide. So, hey, look, I'll just say it. We've seen it with UCLA. We've seen it with UAB. We've seen it around college football at times this year where you let the interim guy take over for a little bit, and it works some magic in that first game. So we'll see if that can happen for LSU. But
it happened before at LSU.
Fair.
Yeah.
So you never know what could happen, but certainly going to be a difficult opportunity there for Frank Wilson in his first game as the head coach. And then naturally, of course, the discussion turns to, well, who's going to replace Brian Kelly? What does LSU do at this point? And everybody's assuming, okay, well, Lane Kiffin, maybe he would have considered the Florida job, but he's definitely going to take the LSU job. And I'll say this. I think if Lane Kiffin is offered the LSU job, which I'm sure he will be, I don't really think you can turn that one down. You can turn down the Florida job. I don't know if you can turn down the LSU job if you're Lane Kiffin. And I think, we could debate this. Maybe this would be a good conversation for a day in the offseason because I know we've talked about it before. But I think LSU is probably one of the 5 best jobs in all of college football. Again, before Brian Kelly, your last 3 coaches had all won a national championship. Clearly, they have money because when they want to make something happen, they went and made it happen yesterday. And they have a history of winning, great recruiting opportunities. It's a great job. So I think Lane Kiffin's probably at the top of that list. I would hope that they would be considering somebody like a John Sumrall who's right there in the state with them because we know a lot of SEC schools are going to want to go and do that. And I will just give my opinion because I know a lot of people yesterday said, well, LSU needs to go and offer Nick Saban $25 million a year and make him tell them no. And they very well may do that, and he very well may say yes. But, again, I find it hard to believe that I don't think that he retired just to sit out for a year or two and then get right back into the same situation that he was dealing with at Alabama, which was all of the NIL and just all of the changes in college football. I don't know if some extra money is what would entice him to get back into that. Now, I could be wrong, but I feel like if he wanted to keep coaching, he would still be coaching in Tuscaloosa. And the fact that he's not is probably a good sign that he's happy being on TV.
He's not Urban Meyer. He's not going to retire only to have a brief stint in the media and turn around and come back when mama comes calling. No, I'm pretty sure that that's not going to be him. And you hear the jokes that, let's I haven't heard a number. Maybe if you talk to Miss Terry, she might tell you something. But I think I'm okay. There might be a job or two that might entice him, but ultimately I think that you're right. One of the main reasons he got out is because ultimate control no longer resided with him. It, for right or for wrong, a good bit of it now is with the players. And so, as relentless of a recruiter as Nick Saban is, he only wanted to really recruit the high school kids that are coming to his program, not have to re-recruit the kids he already recruited. And that may feel like a bit of a cop-out, maybe, because that's the way coaches have to do things now. But also, when you built the dynasty that way, who's to say another way, may or may not work. So I just don't see him coming back. So if you're LSU, Yeah, it makes sense to go after Kiffin, but I would go with Summerall. He's already in the area. He knows LSU, and after you've just spent 50 some odd million, why don't you spend just a little bit less and get a guy that feels like he can win just like Lane can? Because while Lane can win, Lane hasn't won. So you're going to spend what, maybe 15 mil a year to get Lane to feel better and hope that he wins, or maybe spend 6, 7, 8 or so to get someone that you know can win and give them all the resources and everything, can probably become your Dan Lanning.
It's possible. It'll be interesting to see where they go with this because they got a lot of options, obviously, and um, I think John Summerall will make a great hire, whoever ultimately gets him. But if you're LSU, can you sell the fan base on a guy like that? I think that's the question you have to answer, and maybe you don't care about that because you just believe in him. But going to be an interesting next. I mean, month, 2 months, really, up into the early parts of the offseason, I imagine, as more jobs are going to open. And this thing's just going to get crazier and crazier. But Brian Kelly, if you're just now joining us, fired by LSU yesterday. LSU has the bye week, and then Alabama will be their first game with interim head coach Frank Wilson. So that's the big news from yesterday, but we have to get into everything else from the weekend because it was a great weekend around the state. Alabama wins, Auburn getting their first SEC win, in fact, over the Arkansas Razorbacks on Saturday. We'll tell you how it happened next on Morning Jocks. 6:20. Welcome back into Morning Jocks. Conrad Van Order, John Saber with you, recapping another wild weekend of college football. As we started off the show, if you're just now joining us, Brian Kelly being fired by LSU. And now we wait and see where the LSU Bengal Tigers go with their coaching search as they join Florida and Arkansas as the open vacancies currently in the Southeastern Conference. Well, one coach that we thought might be in that mix, but certainly earned himself at least another week at the helm, is Hugh Freeze, as the Auburn Tigers got their first SEC win of the season on the road in Fayetteville over the weekend, 33-24 over the Arkansas Razorbacks. And when you go back and, man, okay, 9-point win on the road, that's nice. But you look at the way that it came about, and with Auburn getting out to a quick 10-0 lead, and you thought they were going to be in control of this thing early, and then you have a disastrous second quarter in which Arkansas scores 21 points. Of course, Jackson Arnold, you have the 89-yard pick six that he threw there with under a minute to go until halftime. You're driving with the football. You're thinking, man, we're about to take the lead going into halftime. And then, boom, it goes from a 14-10 game where you're driving with the chance to take the lead to 21-10 real quick. And Hugh Freeze makes a decision to pull Jackson Arnold and throw Ashton Daniels in there for the second half. And he would lead a pretty nice comeback there as, again, you were down 21-10 at halftime. Auburn then outscores Arkansas 23-3 in the second half. And that would be all that she wrote. And while the quarterback change is certainly going to steal a lot of the headlines and be the conversation moving forward, this was a game that, if you're an Auburn fan, you know it was won by your defense and by one Alex McPherson, because they were absolutely sensational for you on Saturday. So how about this? So Alex McPherson, he misses a couple of field goals last week. You know, he's got Dave Portnoy going after him on social media. All of these people being very critical of him. And then what does he do this week? He responds by going a perfect 6 for 6 on field goals. He also had an extra point attempt. So 7 for 7 on his kicks on Saturday. 19 of Auburn's 33 points. Just an absolutely spectacular bounce back performance from him. Can't say enough about what he meant to this Auburn team. But then you look defensively, you had Rayshawn Pleasant. He had 2 big interceptions for Auburn, including a pick six there in the third quarter, or in the second half. You have Xavier Atkins. He had 13 total tackles, 2 sacks, 4 tackles for loss. He was all over the field on Saturday. So again, while I thought Ashton Daniels came in and showed a lot of poise in his limited action there in the second half, I mean, he only threw the ball 8 times. He was 6 of 8 for 77 yards, carried it 7 times for 35 yards. He did convert on that 2-point attempt as well. But again, he looked like he was in command of the offense. Now, he wasn't able to finish drives in the end zone the way that you would like to see necessarily, but able to get Auburn opportunities to kick those field goals and add on when they needed to. And then defensively, I thought Auburn had a really, really nice showing. And the tail of the tape for Arkansas, too, is you look at the fourth quarter of this game. Arkansas had 4 possessions in the fourth quarter, Saber. They turned the ball over every single one of them. 3 interceptions and a fumble. So kind of an epic collapse by Arkansas in the fourth quarter offensively, but you have to give credit to Auburn's defense because they certainly made a lot of those plays happen.
No, you absolutely do. In the second half, outside of those 4 possessions with 4 turnovers, the only other 2 possessions Arkansas had gained 67 total yards and netted 3 points. They had a 3-and-out after half, which was a punt, and then the lone score that they got in the third quarter was a 9-yard, 66-play drive that got them only a field goal. But at that point, it's like, okay, Auburn, they kicked a field goal. We matched it. You know, things are still going great. But then Auburn's defense just clamped down and forced 4 straight turnovers to end that game. And so looking back at what Hugh Freeze had been saying, even though Auburn fans didn't really want to hear it, if you step back and look at it, I mean, he was right, like in that they are close. And in most of these games, they either had the lead or were not only within 1 possession, within just a couple of points, things just didn't go their way. You can say it was the officiating or not in a couple of cases, but in this game, I don't know if it was the spark that Ashton Daniels brought in, but the defense, for the most part, over these last few games has been this relentless. The only one that it really kind of got out of hand, I would say, would be Texas A&M, and they were still close in that one. But I think at that point it was like, all right, like the offense definitely isn't doing anything, and the defense could only do so much. But this Auburn defense really won them the game. Yes, obviously the offense scored the points, even though there was a pick six in there and multiple turnovers. But the defense is what shut down a Bobby Petrino-led offense, and now it's kind of funny because people were thinking that, okay, seeing what Bobby P can do, why not go ahead and just maybe save some money and have him
Yeah, I
give him the
don't
interim
think that's
tag and make
happening
him.
anymore.
And I also joke with some Auburn friends that with all of the other coaching madness that's going on now, so you're probably going to mess around and end up with Bobby Petrino. Well, not at this rate. At least I think you're safe from that. But this was a really good, solid win by Auburn. However, you can't just rest on the laurels because Kentucky's coming to town. And granted, you're a better team than Kentucky, but you can't just assume that you're going to win. I mean, Kentucky's definitely in desperation mode, and we've seen all across not only college football but the SEC teams that have been desperate, they find a way to win.
Yeah, no, they certainly have, and if you're Auburn, you want to put on a good performance for the home crowd at least once this year, and so hopefully that's what you're able to do this upcoming weekend as they will host Kentucky and try to make it 2 straight wins in SEC play, get back over 500 on the season, and maybe start to give an inkling of hope that, hey, maybe there's an upset on the books against Vanderbilt or Alabama, maybe even both. You never know.
That win might have given Auburn a bowl game at 6-6.
It very
assuming
well
that they
could
lose
have.
to Vanderbilt and Alabama, which most likely, at least they'll be favored or they'll be underdogs to lose.
Yeah,
they
you'd
get
be
Kentucky.
6-6.
You're pretty sure you're getting Mercer. So yeah, that win at Arkansas probably secured Auburn a bowl game.
Yeah, it very well may have. So a good win there for Auburn as they get in the W column in SEC play for the first time this season, 33-24 over the Arkansas Razorbacks. Quickly, let's hear a little bit from Hugh Freeze. We'll just hear this one clip from him right now. And so this was Hugh Freeze after the game. He was asked about Ashton Daniels. And so moving forward for the Auburn Tigers, are we going to go back to Jackson Arnold? Are we going to stick with Ashton Daniels? Is it going to be an open competition? This was Hugh Freeze after the game on if Ashton Daniels won the starting job.
Yeah, I'd like to watch the film, really, and before I know Monday we'll all get together in a press conference, and I have watched it by then and probably have a better idea kind of what I really feel. I mean, it's a weird set of circumstances. We got a guy that leads us down the last 3 games, drives and looks like $1 million and puts it in the end zone. And then we kind of sputter a little bit. So I'd love to make sure I'm accurate in what I'm saying by what I see on film before I go there.
Okay, I get that, Coach, and perfectly fine. You don't want to automatically jump into it. But 130, 3-man front, I hope that's the first question asked, and I hope that's the first thing that we hear.
Yeah, no, and you're right. I mean, we will hear that at 1:30 on 3-man front when we carry the Hugh Freeze press conference for you, and certainly a discussion that we will have all throughout the week here for Auburn. I mean, you look at the second half, every single drive that Auburn had until the final drive of the game ended in points. So it may have been a lot of field goals, but points are points. So we'll see where Auburn goes from here. But we also have to get to Alabama as they were taking on South Carolina in Columbia this weekend, and it was a lot closer, a lot scarier than a lot of Alabama fans were expecting. We'll tell you how Alabama escaped and what's next for the Tide coming up here on Jocks.
6:35. Welcome back in Morning Jocks here on Jocks. Almost at 94.5. I'm not supposed to say that. So welcome back into Morning Jocks. I'm John Saber along with Conrad Van Order. We're going to take a look at Alabama's gritty win over South Carolina in just a moment, but I want to remind you, as football season moves on, you know that means changes in the weather are coming. Honestly, they're about to be here. If you know how I felt a couple of days ago and what it'll feel like later in the week, you know them changes are coming. Protect your HVAC system with a checkup from a trained comfort specialist, so when the cold weather hits, you'll have peace of mind that you're protected by America's most reliable and trusted brand. Find a comfort specialist near you at train.com. It's hard to stop a train.
Yeah, it's going to be as cold later in the week as the Alabama offense was for most of the game in Columbia. Sorry, that was corny, but I had to because it was it wasn't pretty, or at least what we're used to seeing since the Florida State game for Alabama going into this one, and similarly to the Auburn game. Honestly, when you walked away from it, you go, "Thank you, Kane Womack, for doing your job. We kind of owe you one after today." So the Alabama defense coming up big for them in Columbia, because this was, it was a slobber knocker. There's really no other way to put it. But after Alabama, they struggled offensively to put anything together. You get the pick six early off of the kind of bobble there that Deshaun Jones is able to corral and then streak down the sideline, and that was really all Alabama had going for them early on in this football game. But you can't say enough about the defense after they forced South Carolina. It felt like every time the South Carolina was having some good drives, and they had multiple drives, double-digit play drives, taking some time off the clock, just methodically moving the ball down the field. Lenora Sellers scrambling on third down to get, 8 yards, 9 yards for a first down. That was a common sight. But Alabama, again, as we've seen with them, right, once you get close, once you get into the red zone or to the opposing 30 in that territory, they really start to clamp down. And they did that again because they forced South Carolina into a bunch of field goal attempts, which would pay dividends late in this one for the Alabama Crimson Tide. But you were down in the fourth quarter. You were down 8 points with under 10 minutes left to go in the game. And fortunately for you, when you needed your best from Ty Simpson and your playmakers, that's when they delivered the best. So Alabama is able to score 15 points in the final 2 minutes and 16 seconds of regulation. You go down the field late, you get it, you score a touchdown, you make it a 20-22 game. You've got to get the 2-point conversion to tie it and put the pressure really on South Carolina. You had a fantastic play call on kind of like you had a reverse, but they end up going back to Ty Simpson, who throws it to Cuevas in the end zone for the 2-point conversion on a fantastic play call there. But South Carolina, they're going to have the ball back with a little under with about 2 minutes to operate, and all they have to do, right, is kick a field goal to win this game at the buzzer. So good thing for Alabama that they have Deontay Lawson there at linebacker because he's able to force a fumble on a Lenora Sellers run. Alabama gets the ball back with 1:30 and some change left to go in the ball game, and they're able to maintain possession. And instead of having to go for the field goal, Jeremy Bernard runs it in for a 25-yard touchdown on a little bit of a trick play where they had a direct snap going to Jeremy, and he's able to take it in because South Carolina let him score. Shane Beamer, after the game, said that was their strategy, was they were going to let him score. Jeremy Bernard said, hey, Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb told me to score if I had the opportunity there. And I understand, if you're watching the broadcast, I know Jesse Palmer was being critical of, you should have gone out of bounds there and run out the clock. I'm sorry. If you have watched Alabama football this year and their special teams, I don't know how you can say that. And Jesse Palmer has called multiple Alabama games this year. So I understand, yes, the general philosophy is give yourself a chip shot field goal to win. Don't give the other team the opportunity to touch the football. I totally understand the why you would have that mentality, but you have to know the team itself. And I think for every Alabama fan, they were happy, just like I was, to watch Jeremy Bernard run it in, because by no means did you want to have to rely on Connor Talty in that situation to win you a football game.
And I get that if you score, you are then giving the other team a chance to come back. I was watching the end of Michigan State because that ending was a little interesting for some of us out there. And Michigan had the ball under 3 minutes left, and they were just running, just trying to run out the clock. But they broke one, and he ended up running. And I'm like, okay, like you were up, I think 9 or 10. Like at that point, you didn't need the extra points. So at that point, okay, you can slide, and at that point you can run out the clock. But that gave Michigan State the ball back. They went down and scored. I think they got the onside kick, but then they couldn't do much whatever with it. But it feels kind of counterintuitive because as a football player, especially when you have a breakaway like that, it's in your nature to want to score. Now, if Alabama, if they weren't tied, if they'd have been up, okay, at that point, yeah, get down because
then you
you've
take
got
a knee
the
and
lead,
the
and then
game's
it's
over.
over. But you need to win the game somehow. And if I see daylight in front of me, I ain't going to stop.
No.
Plus, the coach just told him to. So yeah, no, that's absolutely what you should do. But also, kudos to Alabama's defense because this has been the third game really that the defense made an amazing, almost miraculous turnover to, if not win them the game, at least stop the momentum. It really started with Diego Pavia and Bray Hubbard and that turnover. I mean, they were going in, they were right about to score and be up. I think it was 10-0, 14-0, or whatever. They're about to be up big. And I'm not to say that Alabama couldn't have come back, but they probably might
would
not
have been
have.
a lot more difficult.
But they were the key turnovers that Alabama's defense has gotten that has saved their bacon. And even though Alabama's been playing a lot of these games close, it's great that if you're an Alabama fan, that's one thing that feels like, even though it's totally different staff and a good number of different players, that's one thing that feels like it's held over from the previous regime, is that the defense, even if the offense is clicking or even if it's not clicking, whatever, the defense will find a way to, hey, we got you, we got this, don't worry, you're going to get the ball back, and we're going to make a stop, and then all you got to do is take care of business.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool how you go and you look back at the game and what got it started for Alabama, the pick six, what ended it, the fumble there by Deontay Lawson. So as you were talking about, the turnovers in critical moments, absolutely key for this Alabama defense here, as they have now won 7 straight games. There's a lot to criticize from that one. The offensive line didn't have a great day. The running game was practically non-existent at times. Ty Simpson missed multiple touchdowns on just overthrows or just inaccurate passes that we haven't really seen from him. But
I think Ryan Williams had another drop.
He did have another drop in a key moment, which, I mean, it was... Again,
that was not fully on him, I think.
He should have had it, but it wasn't a great ball.
Right, yeah.
It wasn't like it hit him right in the chest.
He's almost in Draymond Green territory now, in that he's lost the benefit of the doubt. Like, okay, that wasn't the greatest throw, wasn't in the best of positions, but still your hands were on it. You should have caught it. I mean, now, if that were Jeremy Bernard, even though he had a drop, and even when Jeremy Bernard's drop was like, okay, like, should have caught that one, but it's okay, I forgive you. You've been our best running back for the last little bit. Okay, but Ryan Williams, come on, dog. Like, you're a grown man now. You're 18. A lot of it made of that. You're an adult now. Can't treat you literally with kid gloves no more.
Yeah, it would have been nice to have the one that he dropped. But, it is what it is. That just kind of seems to be what you're going to deal with him this season. But Daniel Hill, another big game there out of the backfield. Again, not a lot going for him rushing, but he did leave Alabama in receiving on the day. But again, my big takeaway from this is I watched this game and at the end of it, I went, this is improvement, because this team last year, I know they played South Carolina and they won, but if you put last year's team in the situation this year was in on Saturday, they would have lost that game. And the fact that Alabama did find a way to win, as ugly as it was against a not great opponent, I think, again, it shows the progress that they have made under Kalen DeBoer, and it shows that this year's team, they've got a little something special, and they truly believe that, hey, we're going to play until that final whistle because we know what we're capable of, and you saw that to the tune of 15 points in 2 minutes and 16 seconds to win one on the road.
And one thing the team hopefully is not going to do, but at least those of us listening and those as fans out there can definitely do, you can, if you're not booking the tickets to Atlanta, at least maybe started looking at it, because as daunting as, at least at the beginning of the season, that final stretch of LSU, Oklahoma, and at Auburn felt, now, especially with Brian Kelly out, and although we can't really necessarily take the interim coach too lightly, because that's kind of been the story of college football this year, but LSU, Oklahoma are now not looking as daunting as they were before. And yes, it's going to be the Iron Bowl at Auburn. It's going to be crazy and wild, but Alabama, all of a sudden, I mean, they are the favorite to win the SEC right now. I mean, that's fully understandable. But now, at least for Bama fans, it's like, okay, like we survived that 5-game gauntlet. Everyone was kind of thinking maybe 4-1, hopefully no worse than 3-2, but made it 5-0. It's like, oh, like we actually have something, and there shouldn't be anything in the way, at least until Atlanta, that should stumble us up.
That should be the case, but again, it's been a weird season of college
Correct,
football,
yes,
so you
yes.
never know what could ultimately happen. And I think a lot of people still are, you see Auburn start to maybe figure some things out offensively, and that's not going to make any Alabama fan feel good about that final game in Jordan-Hare Stadium. You just hope, right, that you're 10-1 going into that one, so that even if you do slip up, you're still going to find yourself potentially in Atlanta, but certainly in the college football playoff at that point if you're Alabama. So a lot of season left to go, but Alabama, they get to rest up. They have a bye week, and then, of course, they return to take on LSU coming up in 2 weeks. But a lot of reaction coming in from you guys on the Courtesy GMC text line, 205-834-9450. That's where we'll wrap things up. Get your thoughts, your takeaways on Brian Kelly, Auburn, Alabama, and much, much more from a college football weekend. That's all next on Jocks. Welcome back into Morning Jocks. Conrad and Saber here with you until we hand you off to McElroy and Kublik in the morning coming up in a few minutes. But we're going to dedicate the rest of the time to you on the courtesy GMC text line 205-834-9450 as we keep it rolling here. And a lot of you see John Mack is still really upset this morning. He says the favorite to win the SEC, get the hell out of here. Bammers and Caitlin DeBoer are squeaking out wins while the Aggies are blowing teams out at home with scary eyes and firing coaches. Keep believing people who say you're the best team in the SEC. Well, John Mack, how quickly you forget that you barely beat Arkansas a week ago. You barely beat a bad Auburn team by 6 points at home earlier in the season. Yeah. And I am looking right now at the betting odds from BetMGM, DraftKings, ESPN, and FanDuel. And guess who they all have listed as the betting favorite to win the SEC championship? That would be the Alabama Crimson Tide. So you can be mad that you feel like your team is not getting the respect that they deserve, but I mean, this is literally all of the betting websites are telling you right now, put your money on Alabama over Texas A&M. That doesn't mean Alabama's going to win anything, but
no.
To say they're the favorite would be a factual statement right now based on what the odds makers are telling you in Las Vegas.
Yes, and personally, I think right now if they played, I do think Texas A&M would win, but Alabama definitely would be favored in that game. And while, yes, Alabama does have the loss, Alabama has maybe the second best win in all of college football, if not the best win definitely in the conference. So as great as A&M has been and looked and done so to an LSU team did just fire their coach. So how good of a win was that? But A&M, yes, absolutely, they should be near the top. But according to Vegas, right now, they are looking up at Alabama.
And see, Bama Hater says the same thing. He says, because an Alabama homer said Alabama is the favorite to win the SEC, that means nothing to me or the real favorite, which should be Texas A&M. Again,
for the record, even though I know we both sound the same, it was me, Bama Hater, not it was not Conrad. I was the one that said that, and I am far from a Bama homer. But also, it's fact. You go if you want to go lay money right now anywhere. I know you can't do it in the state of Alabama, but you can find places to do it. You can't lay it for Texas A&M because you can lay it, but Alabama has better odds.
See this one. I don't know who this is. Steve maybe. He says, Conrad, you lost to a terrible Florida State team. I did not lose. I was not on the field. But he says there's a Tiger Woods betting factor with Alabama for sure. I mean, look, yes, Alabama lost to what is not a very good Florida State team in the first week of the season. You cannot convince me that if you have watched Alabama over the last 7 games that you think that is still the same exact team that lost to Florida State.
So if that's the case, then should BYU be ranked ahead of Alabama too? Because they haven't lost.
I mean, look.
Should Northern Illinois have been in the playoff last year because they beat Notre Dame?
It will all sort itself out on the field. That's the wonderful thing about this, and we can have the great debates. It's just it's funny that I'm just glad Texas A&M fans, you finally have something to puff your chest out a little bit because you've been doing it for decades with nothing. So hopefully this year you actually turn it into a win in a conference championship game or a college football playoff national championship or something along those lines. But we'll wait and see how the rest of the season plays out. All right, a lot of you chiming in on Auburn and Brian Kelly as well. This one coming in says, Auburn is stuck with Freeze now. They will get the 4th best pick out of coaches that are available. Florida, LSU, and Penn State are all better jobs. Thank the AD for dragging his feet on this one. Certainly going to be a difficult coaching search for some schools now. If you're the Arkansas, the Auburns, the Oklahoma States of the world, probably going to have to start looking at some other candidates if some of these jobs do end up coming open as well. This says, do you think Brian Kelly ends up at Penn State? I had floated that idea last week as kind of an escape route for him if he wanted to get out of Baton Rouge. But again, I wonder for Penn State. It's kind of the same thing. Now, Brian Kelly has accomplished more than Matt Rule has, but do you want to go and fire somebody like James Franklin just to hire another coach that has a bad track record against the best teams in the country? I don't know if you're going to sell the fan base on that. Bobby, who's a big LSU fan, he chimes in. He says, I never thought I would say this, but thank you for whooping the Tigers' ass so bad that Brian Kelly is finally out of Baton Rouge. I never lost my voice yelling at a TV before, but I came very close on Saturday because Brian Kelly refused to keep running our running back who was averaging 7 yards a carry more than one time in the second half. LSU should do whatever it takes to get Lane to Baton Rouge. Appreciate that one. Let's see. Don chimes in. He says, finally a good Monday to be an Auburn fan. Now let's see if we can build on this and win some more games. I see at least 2 more wins and hopefully more. Appreciate you chiming in there. People say you're delusional about Alabama. I'm not. I don't know how I'm delusional. If you don't think they're one of the 5 best teams in college football, you're delusional. Mac and Cube is next.